Today, I want to talk about programming books. More specifically, programming books that I own. And the programming books I own come in about 5 different categories. One of them is obsolete. And many of these obsolete programming books, some of the code won't even work anymore. Second type of book is ones that are on specific things, like Linux memory management. And some are superseded by other types of books because they don't use those particular functions anymore. The next one is course reference books, and I have a few of those. And finally, there's books that would be beneficial for you if you are new to programming. I thought I would start by telling you a little bit about my programming history. In the early 70s, I went to college, and they had a computer in the basement where you could use GW Basic to write programs with. And it would be printed out on that green and white paper that you've probably seen in the movies. And that was fun. After that, the first practical programs I ever wrote was years later. And it was graphical user interfaces, I guess you would call them, for DOS. And when you turn the computer on, a screen would pop up and it would say, press 1 for write, press 2 for accounting, and so on. After I learned how to use BASIC a little bit better, I was able to put color backgrounds on it and various other things. Believe it or not, at the time, this was a pretty big deal because you didn't have things like Windows. Then after that, I was at the mall and bought a game called Star Trek 25th Anniversary. That was in 1992. But I needed a computer to play it on. So I walked around the mall, and there was this place that sold all sorts of things, and among them was a computer. It was a 386 SX 25 megahertz for $1,000. And I told them that if they let me install my game on it and come in and play it once in a while, I'd buy the computer. So they agreed, and that's what I did. It took me a long time to come up with $1,000. But eventually I did and brought it home, and when I started messing with it, I realized there was a lot more to computers than just playing video games. Since that time, I started to improve these graphical user interfaces when Windows came out, and you were able to use Visual Basic. Matter of fact, one of the first Visual Basic type programs I wrote was I put a button at the bottom left-hand corner of the screen in Windows, and you clicked on it. And then you picked out a category, say programming, and it would pop up with another window that you could choose which one of the compilers you wanted to use or whatever it was. And then after that, I really cut loose with all this programming stuff. And since then, I've programmed in probably 10 different languages at least. And I discovered a few things. One is that the programming language you pick isn't really all that important. What is important is you learn how to program, how to reason, how to figure out how to do something. And then the second thing I learned is that a particular language isn't better than all the other languages or even another language based on how wonderful it is. It's actually, this language may work best for this, and that language works best for that. If you wanted to write a web page, then you could use HTML and CSS and JavaScript to do it. You wouldn't use C++. Why web page, would you? Of course not. But if you wanted to write a game, which is something that I've done a few of, then you might want to use something like C++. Or if you're writing a utility, maybe you want to use Lazarus as the front end and C++ as the back end. So whatever language you happen to decide to use, the key is to keep practicing with it until you become proficient. Because moving from one language to another isn't all that difficult. Well, now let's talk about books. Basically, I have 5 categories of books. There's obsolete, some of which the code won't even work anymore. There is Pacific books and superseded books. And then there's outdated books. There's reference books. And the last one is books that I would recommend for someone who wants to learn C++ and is brand new at it. These are the books I have. I want to show you a few. This is the DOS reference book. It has the whole back half of this book, which is rather large, is on nothing but how to access registers, hardware registers. Well, no operating system's going to allow you to do that. So this book is pretty much obsolete. This book, for its time, was one of the fastest capable programming books around. But it too uses registers and accesses the memory on the video cards directly, which you can't do anymore. So this book, the code won't even work. Then there's this one. JBuilder from Borland. The compiler won't even work. And then there's this one. Turbo C++. The code in here will work and work quite well. And it was written by experts. So the form and the actual programming is superb. But I wouldn't use it because there's other ways of doing it that's so much more efficient. The next category is Pacific books or outdated books. This is Pacific and I would say a bit outdated. It stands for Object Windows Libraries. And this was a forerunner to all of these drag and drop things that you see today. But I never use this anymore because there's better ways to do it. The next one is this one. C++ Builder. I've had 2 or 3 of these compilers, and they're excellent. What they are is Delphi objects that you drag into a window, just like Lazarus, and then you use C++ code to put them together. Superb, 32-bit, but the C++ Builder series, which has a completely different name now, it's owned by a completely different company, it's expensive. Then there's books like Teach Yourself C in 21 Days. Now this has a lot of, I'll call them tricks or methods of being able to access memory and use video cards and things like that that just isn't necessary anymore. And much of it, like accessing video cards directly, just can't be done. The way that processors work is completely different. And the way the video cards is just astronomically different. So even in the ones where you're doing stuff to access the processor more efficiently, won't even access it more efficiently. It'll slow your program down because of the way that stuff is packed. Then there's this one. Game programming in 21 days. Of course, this is a DOS book, and it has all its code is in Visual C++, which I had to convert all of the libraries, and there's a bunch, into Borland C++, which wasn't too difficult, but there's some slight differences in the way they write code for the two different compilers. And this is actually a rather good book. It still has a few things like how the mechanics of writing games works. But of course, the code is pretty much outdated. Then there's reference books. This is actually supposed to teach you how to program. I used to have C++ that wasn't for Linux. It was just a regular old C++ book. But I gave that to my son, and I use this one because there's a few differences in Linux, like permission on your files. So otherwise, it's all the same. Then there's this book. Now this is a book that tells you how to write your GUIs in Windows, and it'll work in Windows 10 too, by using direct Win32 APIs. They're directly from their libraries. And people don't use this. It never was a popular book in the first place, but I liked it because it was a good reference on how to look this stuff up. But you don't do it that way no more. And now, the books that I think that a new programmer should consider. To start off with, I have no Linux books whatsoever. They're expensive. I have already told you that. But this is the first one right here. C++ from the ground up. This is a superb book. It tells you how to do the important things in C++, and it does it very quickly. And there isn't any huge amount of explanation that much of you won't even understand at this point in the programming world. And the second one, and I highly recommend you getting one of these, and this is STL programming from the ground up. STL stands for Standard Template Library, and it has some huge improvements on C++. You may not be aware, but the way C++ works is that every 3 years or so, a committee gets together and decides what new things they're going to put into the C++ language so that it's always new, improved. For instance, with this TL, it has vectors. Vectors is dynamic arrays. That the vector itself is on the stack, but the elements of the vector are on the heap. And what this does for you, it has one other advantage, and that is that it deallocates the memory you use, so you don't have to. And so you want to learn how to use STL library. And there's others as well that are new. And then finally, there it is, this is a programming reference. Because most of the time in my case, I may know a particular function, but I don't remember how the arguments work anymore, because some of them have rather large amount of arguments. And so this, I can just look up something real quick, like for example, well, it says mapping here. So I can look up how the mapping works in a very quick way. And these are the books I have. So, that is my recommendation for C++. That is my recommendation so that you can get the best of the new goodies that C++ offers. And then you might consider a reference book, but you don't actually have to have one, because these other two books will tell you whatever you need to know about those. But it's quicker. And the things that you need to know about not only C++, but also Pascal, which is what Lazarus uses, is that it's not a language, it's not a stagnant language. They're always adding new things that will improve, make faster, clean up its own memory, and things like that for you. That's it for my video. Oh, I forgot. There's a site called abe.com, or it's abebooks.com, where you can get both of the books that I recommended, C++ from the ground up, and also STL from the ground up, both of them for $10 delivered. So you might consider that.